A new report by Dalhousie Legal Aid Service is shining a new light on the rental landscape in Nova Scotia in what is being billed as the province's first of its kind survey. More than 1,200 Nova Scotians are reflected in the data. Anna Main is a community legal worker with Dalhousie Legal Aid Service, joining us here in studio. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom.
Now, in this study, you aim to access people who don't necessarily use legal aid when it comes to rental disputes in this city, in this province. Why did you want to do that?
Well, at Dalhousie Legal Aid Service, we see people every day who are having issues with their landlord, their tenants who are having some sort of everyday legal problem, but we've seen this huge increase in the number of people coming into Dal Legal Aid for services, and yet when we looked at the numbers of the tenants who are making applications to the actual formal legal dispute resolution process, the residential tenancies program, we noticed that the levels kind of seemed off to us, right? We anecdotally were seeing so many tenants who we felt needed legal services, but we didn't see tenants actually accessing those. So we wanted to know, okay, if they're not going to the formal process to solve their problems, where are they going?
Okay, that's interesting. Let's dive into this a little bit. So you used access to information and court records, as I understand, to get a sense of who is taking legal action and who isn't. What did that research tell you?
So what that told us is, in terms of residential tenancies matters, which is disputes between landlords and tenants, landlords are much more likely to go through those processes. In fact, the number of landlords making eviction applications were about double than all tenant applications combined. So this process, it's meant to be used by both landlords and tenants, but in practice, it's just being used mainly for eviction.
Any sense as to why more tenants aren't going that route?
Yeah, so we did a survey of about 1,200 tenants in Nova Scotia. We asked tenants from all over the province about their housing situations, any problems they might have had. And we did ask tenants if they had a problem, did they take action for their legal issues? And about 42.2% of the tenants who said they had some sort of legal problem or problem with their landlord or their building, so 42% of them took no action at all. And so we wanted to know why. And so the main reasons, number one, were people were feeling hopeless. They didn't think anything could be done for their issue. And we also found that they didn't want to damage their relationship with their landlord or building manager. So tenants didn't want to be seen as bad tenants.
They didn't want to rock the boat.
Exactly. They didn't want to rock the boat. And this is exactly an issue, especially if you're on a fixed term lease, where the lease has an end date and it's up to the landlord whether they want to renew that or not. So tenants who are on a fixed term lease, they don't want to damage that relationship.
I want to ask you about that because this research also looked at the fixed term leases and the prevalence of them. What did it tell you?
Yeah, I was quite surprised by this. Obviously, anecdotally, we'd been hearing that fixed-term leases are, we've been hearing for a lot of people that they're an issue, but when we actually went out and asked tenants, of the tenants we asked who answered the question about the term of their lease, about a quarter of them were on a fixed-term lease. And we also found that the numbers of fixed-term leases have been really increasing since 2020. Of the tenants who had sort of signed their lease this year in 2025, the majority of them were on fixed-term leases. So we're very concerned about that because that affects, housing security. If you don't know from one year to the next or one term to the next if you can stay or not, that's not secure housing.
And so when you look at the bigger picture of what this study revealed, how would you sum it up?
The way we're really summing it up is there is a commitment that the federal government has made for the progressive realization of the right to housing for all. The federal government has made that commitment. That means that governments at every level have to be working towards that goal. And what this report is showing us is that that is certainly not being realized in Nova Scotia, and we are concerned that that right to housing is in fact being sort of eroded for some tenants. So that's sort of the the summary there.
As you said, there's been lots of anecdotes about the rental scene in the province. Here are some clear numbers. What would you like to see happen now that you have this research?
Yeah, we're really calling on government, especially the provincial level, to make policy and legislation that's actually in line with these goals of the right to housing for all. And when we're talking about the right to housing, we're not just talking about a roof over everyone's head. You know, it needs to be a secure housing. It needs to be affordable. It needs to be habitable. So we're calling for sort of evidence-based decisions, listening to tenants when making legislative changes. We don't want to make it easier to evict people, which is what some changes have come into effect recently, have that effect. We want to make it a province where everybody has secure, affordable, suitable housing.
All right. Well, we'll see where all this leads us. So thanks for sharing the numbers with us today.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me.